Welcome to the Mom Please podcast, the #1 generation-spanning show that discusses all the latest issues in modern society, with your millennial host, Eric Joseph, along with baby boomer representative and co-host, Carol Stram. Join us as we delve into what's going on in the world today and discuss how to bridge the aisle to find common ground. And now, for this week's episode of Mom Please.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mom Please, the discussion and debate show that spans generations and tries to make sense of everything that's going on in the world today. I'm your host, representing the millennial viewpoint, Eric Joseph, and I am joined by my lovely co-host, as always, representing the baby boomer perspective, Carol Stram. How are you today, Mom?
I'm great. As you all know, Eric and I are mother and son, and we always like to have discussions about different topics, and we like to keep them civil. Sometimes we're more successful than others at that.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah. So today, we have talked over, what we're kind of going to do for our next couple of episodes, and we have settled for this month on the topic of advice that we would give to our younger selves. So with that said, Mom, do you want to introduce our audience further to our topic today?
Overall, advice is free, although is it really free? Because it takes a whole lifetime to be able to give advice, right?
Right.
So maybe not so free.
Right.
But how do you feel about getting advice from people?
I think I'm a little bit different than most people in this regard. I actually like people giving advice to me in most cases. I have kind of looked back on my life at times, and I have thought, man, if I just had somebody to kind of steer me in the right direction or give me a little bit of an advice, like a little kernel of knowledge, something that I can't have gained myself at this point in my life, maybe that could have helped me. So I do feel like, a lot of people don't appreciate unsolicited advice, but I kind of do. I'm a bit of a weird one in that regard.
Okay, so that's interesting because I think in general, the general population does not like unsolicited advice.
I think that's true.
I myself am a big fan of asking people for advice, but when I feel like somebody's trying to solve my problem if they just give me unsolicited advice, like I'm not worthy enough to be able to solve something myself.
Oh, really?
Right.
You think so?
Okay. So, and I looked
that.
into this a little bit, and there's a professor of communications at Northwestern University, Dr. Bruce Lambert, and he has some thoughts on it. And he thinks that you should always, before you give unsolicited advice, you should always think to yourself, how is that person going to receive the advice?
Right. Okay.
And always ask permission to give advice to somebody.
I think that's a really important
So
one.
don't just sound off on how smart you are about a situation, but say, hey, are you interested in hearing what I have to say about this?
Right.
And then lastly, he says, but the bottom line is don't give advice. Unsolicited advice. Because people in general, you don't know the background of the whole situation that they're in.
Right.
Your own life might not be in a position where you should be the authority on giving advice.
Fair.
And people in general don't like hearing advice. And lastly, they don't take the advice.
Yeah, you're probably right about all those things. Yeah.
So he has some interesting thoughts on that. But our purpose today is more a solicited advice situation because we're not talking to the outside world. We're talking to our younger selves. Right.
We had this idea where I asked my mom, I was like, hey, you're a little bit older.
Be tender.
I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be nice. You're old. No, I'm kidding. So I asked her, I was like, you have probably gained a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom over the many, many years that you have spent, on this earth, doing things, traveling, having careers, having relationships. So what advice as a person your age would you give to somebody like my age? And I think then you kind of threw it back at me and you were like, okay, well, you got to think about something like that. So now you're 35 years old, 36 soon. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Right.
And that's kind of how we landed on this topic.
So anyway, that's where we're going from here. But I kind of started this journey from two aspects. One, I wanted to look at somebody that I thought I admired.
Okay.
And what advice they give to people. And the person that I landed on, for better for worse, is Warren Buffett. And I like Warren Buffett because he's, self-made. He's a pragmatist. He's smart. He's forward-thinking. He's very successful.
Yeah.
And what's his advice for living?
Okay.
And he has several things that he says in his speeches, and he's written on this as well. But he usually starts. This sounds a little odd. He starts with, "How do you want your obituary to read?"
Okay.
So, in other words,
Interesting.
he's looking at it from a legacy standpoint.
Yeah.
What do you
what
want
will people remember about you?
What will people remember about you?
Yeah.
And then he gives just a short list of ideas, and I think they're self-explanatory for the most part. Marry the right person. Invest in yourself. So invest in as much education and as much learning as you possibly can.
I definitely agree with that one.
Associate yourself with a high grade of people, like people who could mentor you, people could assist you, people you can learn from. Work for people you respect. Maybe a little harder than you might think to come by because
so.
you don't, and you're in a corporate America situation, you don't always
get to pick who you work for necessarily, right? Yeah.
Success is not measured by money.
Okay.
Success is more measured by the opportunity to spend with your family and doing things with them.
All
How
right.
do you get there?
Yeah.
Know what your priorities are. So know the things that you're really interested in pursuing. Avoid major mistakes, like, for instance, a young person. Young persons nowadays have so much access to credit that never existed when I was certainly an 18 and 19-year-old.
Yeah.
So don't drive up credit cards, unnecessarily, and follow your own gut instincts. That's the quick and dirty from him. And so I started talking to a lot of my friends about this topic, and I have this dear friend, Pat Chadwick, who pointed me in the direction of this book, 30 Lessons for Living, Tried and True Advice from the Wisest Americans by Dr. Carl Pillermer. And Eric and I read this.
Yeah, we both read this book in preparation for this podcast today.
In conversation. So I'm just going to go through some of the highlights that I got from the book.
Sure.
And then we can share more of the advice that I would give to my 35-year-old self and the advice you would give, of course, to your 18-year-old self.
Right.
But in this book, first of all, the people that are writing this information or providing this information are not young people. They are anywhere from, my age and older, all the way to 100 years old.
Right.
So it is generationally people who have really been around for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I think what the author highlighted in this was that most of the people in this generation, these people carry with them knowledge from a very specific time. These are people who were born in the Great Depression era or before that, and who experienced World War II, who experienced the tumultuousness of the 60s and 70s.
Right.
So they have a very interesting, and I guess you could even say they witnessed the advent of the information age, now with computers and the internet and globalization. So this group of people...
And then, of course, whatever we're calling what's going on now.
Right, whatever is happening right now, right. So this group of people has a very unique set of knowledge that we are losing, and I think, this book was written in 2010, or is copyrighted from 2011. So it was written from probably about 2007 to or 2006 to about 2010. The author said he spent 4 or 5 years doing this. And... the sobering thought at the end of the book was only 25% of the people who are in this book, who are being quoted, are alive today.
Okay,
probably.
That was a Debbie Downer. Thank you very much.
Well, yeah,
sure.
but it's kind of important to understand that this is knowledge that is
might be
from
lost.
a generation that could have been lost, but is now being passed on in various different ways. And this is one of those ways, is this book right here.
So the highlights that I have from what I read were things like, in considering relationships.
Okay.
You're more likely to have a satisfying long-term relationship if you have more in common, if you are people who are more similar to each other than dissimilar. So this whole idea that people used to say, well, opposites attract, is not true.
Only in magnets, I guess.
And only in rom-coms.
This one, This one I'm personally maybe not totally in agreement with, because I actually feel like my wife and I we are similar, yes, but we do share several major things, I think, about us that are different. And I think, well, here.
Okay.
Let me explain.
We're supposed to argue a little bit.
Right.
So.
We are supposed to argue. So let me explain here. So I was raised in a family that was very A-type by nature, very go-getter, very do things. If you want something, go do it. If you have the ability, go make it happen. And my wife is very, very much a B-type personality. She's more laid back. She's more take things as they come. Don't sweat the small stuff, which I actually do think is one of the life lessons in this book. And I learned to be a lot more like that as a result of spending a lot more time with her. And I think that that's a positive thing for me. I think for me, that's
agree,
a positive thing.
It doesn't say that every point of your personality or who you are has to match. What it's saying is, you do come from a homogeneous background in terms of you both grew up in the exact same
in the same place, in the same circumstance. We're both like white people, right?
They both had the educational experiences that were, pretty much the same.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of tracking.
There's a lot of stuff that makes us very similar.
That makes you very similar.
Yes.
So I don't think it's as dissimilar as you might think, but I do think that things like having more patience, being around somebody like that is golden if you can find that other person.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
So yeah, the other thing in relationships, it really talks about how you really have to like each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people fall in love with the idea of being in love and being in romance and all that good stuff. But as people, do they actually like each other?
I think it says something in the book about you want to end up marrying your best friend.
Right.
And I think that's really true, because marriage, there's a lot of time where it's exciting. There's a lot of time where it's really, really fun and interesting things are happening. You have the wedding, you have the honeymoon, you have trips that you go on. But a lot of the time, you're just kind of hanging out.
Right.
And if you don't like the person that you're with when you're just hanging out, that's going to be a problem long term.
There was this old, the Everybody Loves Raymond show where his parents are sitting and they're eating grilled cheese sandwiches and soup together, and they're not talking. And the wife, Raymond's wife, thinks, isn't that just beautiful? And then they show in their heads, they're like, God, I wish that person would just die.
Oh my God.
So, you do spend a lot of time together. That is not terribly exciting. And it is about logistics and things like that.
Yeah.
And, did you get the car cleaned, or did you change
get the
oil,
groceries,
whatever.
whatever.
Right. And forget that notion of, as you meet somebody, that you might change them.
Okay.
Because you won't change them. And there was an old Broadway play, I love you, you're perfect, now change. Okay. So you just have to forget that idea completely. And
you're perfect, now change.
Right. And that friendship is as important as romantic love.
Yeah.
And
just kind of said that.
Although, as an aside, I believe I told all three of my children when they were getting married that if the sex wasn't great before marriage, it wasn't going to get any better.
I don't think she told me that, guys. I think she's lying. I think
she's
fibbing.
I am not
fibbing.
You have to mom please me.
I'm trying to rack my... okay. Yeah,
I remember where I told it to you. We're in a golf cart.
Yeah,
We're in a golf cart.
Maybe I was focused more on my golf game.
Okay.
Jeez.
So you have to give more than you receive. You think about how you can make that person have a better day.
Yeah.
And let your partner have a say once in a while. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's super important because, I can be a bull in a china shop,
Yeah, tell me about it.
Ouch. But, I'm more tempered. I want to hear the other person's opinion, and I want to know, what they have to say and how they would maybe go through a situation in whatever way.
Yeah.
And then highlights the book for me on careers, where choose a career for the intrinsic value, not for the money.
Okay.
So in other words, love what you do.
Okay.
But for some people, where this misses the boat, some people, the reward is the money. They like money.
There are always people out there, and I think always will be people out there who the most important thing to them is making money,
right,
and getting more money, and we kind of see people in our lives that have done that and, where they're going. And sometimes they really like themselves and they like where their lives are going. But other times, I think a lot of these people, they end up making all this money. And then at the end of whenever their peak money making days are over, they kind of sit back and they look at it and say, well, what was all that for?
Right.
Why did I do that? Why was that so important to me?
Right.
And
I think that's a question you have to ask yourself. And people always say if you love what you do, you don't have to worry about the money, this, that, and the other thing.
Or you don't have to.
But there's a pragmatic side to you have to make a living.
That's true.
Right.
Everybody's got to eat.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you need to balance the money that you make with the time that you're spending. And I think your generation is probably better than the generation in that book.
Probably.
Regarding balancing, having work-life balance.
I think that my generation highly values the work-life balance.
Right.
I mean, we're essentially the ones that don't want to go back to the office right after the
Weirdos,
COVID work from home stuff. No, it's great working from home.
You like the coffee talk at the cooler.
Yeah,
you
that's
missed
fair.
that. I'd miss that. Anyway, you
miss
have
the
to
commute,
remember
though.
the book says, there's always somebody richer, smarter,
Yeah.
more attractive, more successful than you. Just get over it. Get over it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to move around to different jobs. I think that's an important
one. I think my generation's very good at that.
Yeah, I think your
we're
generation
super good
is
at moving around.
way better about that.
Yeah.
I think that the problem was for my generation is that once you got into a corporate structure, it got very comfortable.
I think a lot of people like working at the same place because they just like being there. And that might be because of the structure that it provides them or because just the people that are there with them.
Right. And there's a certain comfort with that. I mean, it becomes your extended family in some
It
respects.
does, right?
Even if your job isn't great, do it to the best of your ability. I cannot agree with that more.
Yeah.
That whatever you're doing, give it your best, And considering other things, I do love this, that emotional intelligence trumps IQ.
Okay. And explain that. What do you mean by that?
Well,
or what does the author mean by
being
that?
in touch with other people on an emotional level in a workspace, in your personal life, is more important than being smarter than them, than being, intellectually superior to them.
Yeah.
Because, we all have relationships are I think they're the most important things that we have. And so I get in tune with other people.
Okay. Yeah.
Act like you need your body for 100 years.
You're probably gonna. Maybe not 100, but
Maybe
close
100,
to it.
maybe
Close
100.
to it. Yeah.
Learn new stuff all the time. Stay connected with the world. That helps you, reconnect.
Okay.
Have no regrets. Now, this is an interesting one because that's hard to do over a lifetime.
That is.
Right?
I think that's one of the hardest
right.
things
When
to
you're
do.
my age, to think about, oh my gosh, should I have any regrets? And one of the things that I decided post-divorce is that I would choose not to have any more regrets in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And I believe you know this about me, that I don't like heights. I'm afraid of heights.
Same.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I took a hiking trip to Yellowstone.
Oh, fun.
And Jackson Hole.
Yeah.
After that. And I said to the friends that I went with, look, I'm going to do this really slow, but I am going to do this. And I did do it. And so I have no regret about that. Now, does that mean I'm going to jump back on and do that again?
Maybe not.
Necessarily.
Yeah.
But it was something that I felt I just wanted to get done off my list, and just saying that I could do it. The other thing is, I went to Israel and I had the opportunity to also hike Masada, which is a historic spot, did that, and then also swam in the Dead Sea.
Oh, that's
which
neat.
Is actually
probably kind of weird,
it's
right?
kind of creepy, gross.
Yeah.
'Cause it's kind of dirty and muddy at this point. But, I think the idea is say yes to opportunities.
Yeah. I want to say about that. The thing about the living with no regrets, I think sometimes, I used to say, I think that anybody who says that they have no regrets after they lived a full life is full of shit. I don't believe them.
I'd say there's probably one thing that they can think of, right?
Maybe. Or my thought was, well, then they didn't take enough risk.
Oh,
they didn't dip their toes into the pool enough times.
Right.
But I think that I'm coming around to this idea that that's not exactly what that phrase means is like, don't have any regrets, or when somebody says, I don't regret anything they, at the end of their life, what it kind of means is that they're happy for all of the experiences that they were able to have.
And some of those experiences may not have been so positive.
Right. But that doesn't, maybe if they hadn't had those initial not positive experiences, then they wouldn't have had the later on positive experiences, and vice versa. You didn't have the negative experiences because you didn't have the initial positive experience. So I think, you just have to kind of, it's a worldview. It's not necessarily that there wasn't a moment that they wish they couldn't go back to and maybe do differently. It's that they are okay
with
that
what
it happened in that way.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
And in general, that's really how I
so
do.
I've kind of changed my view a little bit on kind of
in general,
what that
that's how I
means.
feel about things in general. Travel more. One of the things Tom's daughter is younger daughter is applying to graduate schools for an MBA, and basically those schools want you to go travel and visit other countries and learn about their economies and their structures.
That sounds neat.
And that's a big part of those programs now today.
Oh, that's super cool.
So
man, that's something that I do have a little regret about. Speaking about regrets, is that given an opportunity when I was in university or at college to study abroad, I didn't take that because I didn't think that I would have time doing that and having an engineering workload. But I'm pretty sure I was wrong. I could have traveled, and I should have.
The other thing is you could have said to me and your dad, look, I'm going to go through this program. I'm going to pound through it for the 4 years. Yeah. And then at the end of that, I want to take a little travel break.
Well, I can travel now.
Yeah,
right?
It's not like you're an old man. You can.
No, I'm not. So I can still travel.
Choose happy. Only you yourself can be happy.
I liked that one.
Other people cannot make you happy.
Yeah.
I had this friend that I would see her. She was a runner.
Okay.
And I would watch her run. She'd probably run past our house, regularly. And all of a sudden, she was running with a smile. And the next time I ran into her, I'm like, what are you doing? And she goes, I just decided that I want to be happier. And I think running with a smile is a good thing. So now she runs with a smile on her face.
It kind of sounds like something Phoebe Buffay would do from Friends, right?
Did you ever see how she ran?
Like crazy, like a mad woman.
Live in the moment.
Yeah.
Put down the phones. Take away all the noise.
Yeah, stop taking so many damn selfies, everybody.
I don't care what your food looks like.
Yeah, we don't. Unless you're taking a picture of it for your MyPlate app, right?
Okay, right. That's good.
Yeah.
And stop.
Right.
Stop.
Yeah.
Savor the very small things. I think this was an important thing it said. And like I was thinking about things that I really savor, and it's stupid stuff. Like I don't even drink real coffee anymore. I haven't had caffeine for 10 years.
For a super long time. Yeah.
But I savor that first cup of coffee, decaffeinated coffee in the morning. I love the smell of it. I love the ritual of sitting down with a cup of coffee and kind of just, planning my day and my moment. I just love that moment.
Yeah.
I love the smell of newly cut grass.
I don't.
Yeah,
it gives me a headache.
Okay.
I hate it.
Yeah, okay.
You can like it, though.
I love a great vista, whether it is a cityscape or a beautiful golf course or the ocean or the mountains. Just the breathtakingness of all that is and how it all somehow fits together is just amazing to me.
Yeah.
So I just love looking at that. And I like a nice long drive.
On the golf course or in your car?
Well, I do like a nice long drive on the golf course. I wasn't thinking of it that way, though. I really like a drive in the car.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And I love a great song.
Yeah.
Anyone
in specific? Anything off the top of your head?
No, not today. We're not talking about that today. But,
okay.
And the one other thing that the book talks about is believe in a higher authority. Relinquish control.
This was an interesting part
and everything will be all right. And I think that converse to that, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, is basically you're not in control of everything.
Right. Yeah.
However,
there's some amount of randomness.
However you
lives.
choose to approach the world, you do not have full control of it, and you have to recognize that.
Yeah.
So that's what I got from the book. But I'm curious now about the items that you think the pieces of advice that you would give your 18-year-old self.
Well, thinking back to my 18-year-old self, I was pretty dumb. Not like stupid, not like intellectually dumb, but
naive, maybe?
Naive,
Okay.
extremely naive, very sheltered, not a very good understanding of the things that actually happen in the world. I grew up in a community that you could definitely say was protected from most of the ills of the world, most of the bad stuff that can happen in the world. Lived in like a pretty sleepy suburb, pretty well off, and there were a lot of lessons that I had to learn, and a lot of ones that I had to learn kind of difficult in a kind of difficult way as I grew up, I guess you could say. And I'm still growing up. I'm still doing a lot of growing, but there are a few really, really big ones that I would really stress to myself. And this is kind of, I'm thinking of it. I'm thinking of 18-year-old me. I've just graduated high school. I'm headed off to college, or maybe a little bit before, maybe when I'm 18 years old, 17 years old, as a senior in high school,
Okay.
and I'm like thinking about going off to college,
Okay.
applying to colleges, or whether or not that's
Right.
something I'm even going to do, because
Okay.
that's not something everybody does, right? So I did go to college, and this is stuff I would tell myself definitely before having done that. Don't focus just on what you're good at. Focus on things you like to do. Because if you only focus on things that you're good at, you're going to find that, you might end up in a very maybe high-paying position, or a position of some prestige or power later in life after pursuing that one thing that you were very good at, and that might be like, a career for you, but you might end up being miserable because you don't actually have the passion and the joy to get up every day to do that thing. And this is definitely something I wish I would have thought about a little bit more, because I think I ended up getting a degree for something that I thought would pay me a lot of money, and and that's something I thought that I wanted. I thought that I wanted at that time in my life to make a lot of money. So I feel like I prioritized a little bit poorly there. I feel like I should have been focusing more on what I liked to do, as
Right.
opposed to
Although
other things.
I will disagree to the extent that in general, when people are good at something, they do like to do it.
That's usually true. That's usually
I
true.
mean,
But that's not always true, because if you look at a lot of athletes, like we both read that Andre Agassi book, the
Right,
Open,
right.
And that guy hates playing tennis.
Well, now he's a big pickleball guy, so that's all I can say.
Maybe pickleball's a little more relaxing.
But that's one in a million.
Sure,
I mean,
sure,
I
sure.
think in general, you wouldn't have played high school baseball had you not been good at it, and you liked it.
I liked it.
You liked it.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And the same goes, holds for your brother and sister in terms of the athletics that they participated in high school.
Or the careers that they have chosen to do
whatever
now.
they've chosen to do.
Yeah.
But I do think in general, it is from a practical standpoint that most people, when they like something, it's because they
they're
are good at it.
Partially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're
Yeah.
not going to keep pounding yourself. Like, I'm not going to become a boxer. I'm not going to be good at
Are you
that.
sure, Mom? You could probably take on Mike Tyson. You saw how bad he did in that fight a couple months ago.
Right. So anyway, I don't think that's going to happen. But I appreciate your thoughts.
The
on
the next thought is kind of ties in with that. Don't worry so much about money. For me, I think I definitely worried too much about having a career that paid me a lot of money, and I neglected just kind of focusing on doing things that I would enjoy doing and that I would find a lot of satisfaction from doing. When I worked at AT&T
Mm-hmm.
for 4 years out of school, it was a very lucrative job. I was making 60,
Yeah. You don't have to say.
Well, I was making $60,000 right out of college.
Right.
I had good benefits. I had like a 3-year contract, so I had job security, and that job made me miserable. I could not find any enjoyment in what I was doing. I tried to make enjoyment in what I was doing. I tried to pursue things in that organization that I thought I would enjoy and make me happy, but I couldn't make any headway at all towards them. So I eventually decided that that's not something that I can do for myself anymore.
Right.
I can't be happy here. I need to move on to something else.
Yeah. Well, and not, it's hard because money can handcuff people.
Yeah, I know. Saying,
I mean, you
saying
can-
that money is not important is not entirely true.
Right.
Like we said earlier, everybody does have to eat. I totally understand that, but at the end of the day, you know, a lot of the seniors in this book gave this piece of advice or had this reflection. They didn't care about how much money they had made. They cared about how enjoyable their career was, or the people that were part of their lives during their career. And when they looked back on things, it wasn't about I worked so hard and I was able to trade my dollars for this thing. It was more, oh, well, I did all these things and I was able to mentor these people, or I was able to have this kind of an impact. You know, it's about the things that they were able to accomplish, less so than the amount of money that they made doing so. Right. And a bunch of people, even in this book, said, like, I didn't live super great, you know, my whole life. We weren't rich, we weren't wealthy, but still, I found happiness in
where you were at,
where I was at, or the simple things that I could enjoy, you know, all that stuff. So, the next thing I would say is allow yourself to be vulnerable, but not too vulnerable. And there's what I mean by that.
Okay, that makes no sense.
Okay. What I mean by that, let's say you're going on a date with a girl for the first time, and you can say something like, yeah, I don't really have the greatest relationship with my parents. That might be a little bit vulnerable. What might be a little too vulnerable is saying, yeah, my dad used to beat me and I would fight him, and then my mom did a bunch of drugs and smoked, you know, like all the like crack, and I was a crack baby. That might be a little too much, right? Where I would say in college for me, and this is, I'm telling on myself here a little bit, for whatever reason, I don't know why I thought this was a good idea, but I thought it was the best idea ever when I first got to university and we're kind of doing the orientation and everybody's meeting each other. Is we had like a share something about yourself that you haven't told anybody or something like that moment. And I was like, oh, I'm a virgin. I haven't had sex yet.
Okay. Eric, right? Please.
Hey, there you go. Oversharing. Too vulnerable. That was too much. I should never have told people that, because that colored the way that my entire dorm room saw me for the rest of the entirety of freshman year. So, you know, there are some things that I think you can share right away with people that you know are just meeting.
I think
for
you
the
have to
first
get
time.
to know people first.
But I think you have to get to know people first before you go too deep into things.
Well, you know, yeah,
that was a dumb thing for me to do.
I would say, what the heck?
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
But, you know, it's good advice to give somebody else, I guess, in terms of, you know, oversharing. It is. Okay.
So the next bit of advice, I would say, do take risks and do take chances. Put yourself outside of your comfort zone early and often. Do things that you might not think that you would ever see yourself doing. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, actually take it seriously, but like not too seriously. So
you mean like doing a podcast when you're a senior citizen? Yeah,
sure. Okay. Exactly. Right. You know, and you know, we like to joke around. We like to have fun, and we do take it like a little bit seriously. Like, you know, in the pre-production and stuff, you know, we've had words with each other. It's not like sunshine and roses all the time, but you know, we're also having a good day of it, right? At the end of the day, we do enjoy doing this with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're fairly serious about it.
Yeah. Right. I think so too. Okay. I think so. I mean, look, we've got nice new Mom Please mugs. We're going to have some, you know, posters and stuff pretty soon. We're getting more official as the day goes by.
We're getting more merch, as they say. More merch.
Right? Yeah.
One of the things that I bought when I was younger than you, I bought a manual transmission car and did not know how to drive it.
Yeah, you've told me this story. This is a good one.
So I literally bounced that car home because the salesman said, "Oh, it's a piece of cake."
Yeah, you didn't know how to.
I'll teach you when you come and pick it up. And then it was his day off when I came.
He
said he was going to be there, and he wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I literally bounced that.
Well, why would you ever trust a car salesman, though? That's kind of your fault. That's kind of your fault.
I don't know.
You were young.
I was young.
You were young.
I was young.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the long and short of it is, you know, that was a kind of a kooky thing to do.
Yeah. Oh,
but
100%.
you know, it's something that I know how to do. I know how to, you know, drive a manual transmission,
which is something that not very many people nowadays do know how to do, or like less and less people are learning.
Well, and now you're going to have, you know, driverless cars. So
yeah, right.
Nobody will know how to parallel park.
I know, it's so sad. So next, I agree with you and the book that say, travel.
Yeah.
Go places, do things, immerse yourself in other cultures, learn how other people live so that you don't sit there when you're older and constantly think, man, I wonder how life is in China. I wonder how life is in Africa. I wonder what people are like in Europe. If you want to know, go and do it. And I should have done this when I was at university. I should have taken a study abroad, semester. I definitely should have, because my brother did it, my sister did it, and they both had nothing but good things to say about it. And Andrea, my sister, got the opportunity to go to South Africa, which is like, that's not
crazy.
Exactly like the easiest thing to do.
I didn't even want her to go.
I'm sure you weren't super comfortable
I didn't
with
want
that,
because
right?
I had been to South Africa myself, and I didn't think it was a safe place.
Yeah, you were there for the World Cup,
for
right?
a young woman. I didn't think it was safe to be there.
Yeah.
And she and her roommate were never alone, and in a group. They always were out in a group,
and they ended
always
up having a fantastic
time,
right?
Time, so.
And she's got a couple of really cool pictures. Like she's got a picture of her petting a cheetah. She
I think
skydived out.
I don't think
right?
that cheetah had any teeth.
Probably not. Well, apparently cheetahs are very docile. They're like dogs, from what I hear.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's true. Go look up. In zoos.
On our next podcast.
Yeah, next podcast. But apparently in zoos, if cheetahs are sad, they pair them up with dogs, and the dog makes them happy.
Weird.
All right, moving on. Don't try too hard.
What does that even mean?
Well, it kind of means like,
you should try hard at everything that you're doing.
Well, okay. Here. It's a bit different. There's a difference between trying hard at things in your life and being a try hard. And I would say that the difference is that putting effort into things and trying hard and trying to accomplish stuff, that's trying hard. But trying to make people like you.
Being a suck up?
Being a brown noser, being a suck up, being somebody who doesn't really have their own personality and is just kind of goes with the flow, whatever everybody else is doing. That's what I do. Don't do that. You have to be your own person. You have to figure out the things that you want to do. You have to figure out the things that you like to do, and you have to go do those things. So I feel like there was actually one of the people in the book was like, say yes to everything. I disagree with that.
Well, I think
be a little discerning.
Right, be discerning.
Be discerning.
I myself have been in situations where I have said yes to an opportunity that presented itself to me. For instance, to be on a board.
Yeah.
And what I didn't do was my due diligence on the organization.
Okay.
And they were in financial straits. Oh. And then you
were brought in to right the ship.
I had to right that ship, and that was the retirement community that I was chair of.
And
that was rough, and 5 years of my life I'll never get back.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
And I think you have to be discerning about that. And
I think so.
I've also been when you get into volunteer opportunities, once a volunteer, always a volunteer. And so people will always ask you to, will you do this? Will you do this? And I have always been discerning about that and say, I can't do it now, but if you come back to me in a year because I have to finish this other commitment, I would never overcommit myself, because I always want to do a good job. I want to leave an organization in a better space than I got it in.
Yeah, you don't want your impacts to have been negative, right?
I don't want to overcommit.
Yeah, that's fair. The next thing I would say is, and this kind of ties in with that, is be honest. Not just to the people around you, but also to yourself. If you are not honest with yourself, you will probably find you will end up doing things that you don't want to be doing. You will end up not liking the things that you're doing. You will end up in situations that you don't want to be in. But if you're honest with yourself, you will go pursue the things you want to do. You will be hanging out and spending time with the people that you want to be with. You will be going after all the opportunities that present themselves that you think are good for you and that you want to do. And that will naturally lead you to be honest with everybody else. Like if you have nothing that you feel like you're kind of not doing correctly, or maybe you feel like you're ashamed of, because I think at the end of the day, we all kind of know, there are things that we do that we're not entirely proud of, or things that we do that we're like, man, I really shouldn't have done that thing,
Right.
Yeah, you just kind of got to be honest with yourself a little bit, and that will help you in those situations where you feel that way, because you probably won't even find yourself in those situations. So as long as you can be honest with yourself,
or if you're at least honest with yourself, that'll give you more ability to walk away from the things that you really don't want to engage in.
Right.
You know,
right.
to feel okay about yourself, because you feel okay about yourself, so you don't engage in the stuff that's, I really don't want to do that.
Right. This is also something that I fell into a bit of a trap of, in trying to be a likable person. I would co-opt stories that I knew other people had gone through, and I would share them as my own, to try and present myself as a more interesting person. And I found that, not only is that kind of a weird thing to do.
It is a weird thing to do.
You should have your own stories, and if they're not that interesting, who cares? And if you feel like they're not that interesting, take the opportunity to make interesting new memories. Like if you feel like that thing that friend did was so cool, go do that thing. Go actually make your own memory of doing that thing, whatever it is, that you thought was cool enough to share a story about yourself, right? So don't lie to yourself, about your own life. Be able to look inside, be able to have that inner conversation with yourself.
Why do 17 and 18-year-olds do that, though?
Well, I do think
everybody wants to be liked.
Everybody wants to fit in. Everybody wants to be liked. And when you're 17 or 18, what have you actually done?
Nothing.
You've not done anything interesting that you can talk about with other people and say, like, I did that thing. And if you have, you're one of, like, very, very few people who has ever done anything. Like let's say, I don't know, you're a big athlete and you won a state championship. How many people can say that?
Well, I think you, by the time you were 17 or 18, you drove like race cars in the snow or something. You learned how to do something.
We did some neat stuff. Yeah, there was some interesting stuff that we did, but at the end of the day, like I have so much more stuff nowadays that I can be like, well, I've done this, I've done that.
You're also 35 years old.
Right, I'm 35 years old, so I feel like, I'm a more interesting person just naturally. I have these things to tell people, right? But like I said, don't
fabricate.
Don't fabricate. Go make those memories.
Right.
Go do those things. Go have those experiences.
Right.
And this one is a little bit silly, but make sure that you don't fall out of exercising. I was a big athlete in school and in high school. And all throughout college, I pretty much neglected any sort of serious physical activity. And I missed some opportunities. Like, I was invited to join a recreational, like, intramural soccer team with my friends, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. But then I was like horribly out of shape, and I was like, I'm not going to go run around on a soccer field being horribly out of shape and being an idiot out there. Why would I do that? And so I just didn't. And that was a mistake.
Well,
that was a mistake.
It wasn't a mistake as much as it was just something you didn't prioritize.
It was a missed opportunity that I would like to have participated in.
Yeah, okay.
When it happened, now, or at least now I realize that, because I have taken the time to go join rec soccer leagues now in my life, right? In that same vein, and this is specifically, I'm going to go a little bit more deep into like college university life now. So this is for anybody maybe potentially thinking about college and university, or who's maybe even going off to college or university next fall, right? When you're at university, take advantage of the food.
What?
Your parents will probably pay for a very overpriced meal plan that you will be able to swipe a card at any of your dining halls on campus and get at least 2 basically unlimited meals every single day. And at my campus, man, we could get like omelets made. We had sandwich bar. We had salad bar. We had, some days we had like, on special days, we had like steak and lobster tail.
You should judge a university by the food.
Well, not entirely, but listen. College and university is a really special time for many reasons, because you're not going to have opportunities like you will at almost any other point in your life. You're basically free from parental jurisdiction at this point for the most part. You are on your own. and you have access to a bunch of other people who are like you, probably because they're going to the same school that you're going to. They are doing the same stuff that you're doing. You have all these resources and access to these
and
things.
you have no responsibilities other than studying.
Yeah, and you have right, very minimal responsibilities. So take advantage of everything that the university offers, and that definitely includes the food. So don't waste that. Sorry, I just think that that's kind of important. Take advantage of the fact that there are a lot of people of the gender that you're attracted to around. Date, put yourself out there.
Do people date in college? I don't know.
Yeah, 100%.
They do,
People definitely date in college. Or when I was in college, people 100% dated. For sure. So maybe don't look to get into a relationship immediately, but definitely, have fun. Have fun with women. If you're into women, have fun with guys. If you're into guys, have fun with everybody. If you're into everybody, it's a time of a bunch of young people who are all hopped up on hormones, all together, free, with very little responsibility. Take advantage of it.
My good friend Lori Miller used to say she always wished for me to have a boyfriend when I wanted one and to not have one when I didn't want one.
There you go. That is a very nice thing for her to wish upon a friend. I like that. So keep that in mind, that you're basically never going to have this similar opportunity again where you're having all these different people who are probably pretty like-minded,
right,
probably pretty similar to you. So consider this as one of the best opportunities that you have to eventually meet somebody that might become a very serious long-term relationship for you, and may even be the person that you end up marrying. Now, that didn't happen for me. I did not meet the person that I ended up marrying at university or in college, but
it's because you told everybody you were a virgin.
Probably. Mom, please. Rude, but true. So think about that. This is another good tip. Take advantage of the professors and the academic advisor that you have.
Right.
Because that person and those people, specifically with the academic advisor, that guy or gal is in your corner. They want you to succeed.
Yeah.
They want you to matriculate. They want to see you graduate, and they will make mountains move in order to make sure that happens. And I know that my academic advisor was in my corner the entire time. Shout out Dr. Santhanam, Villanova University. You're the man.
Woohoo!
So very much appreciate that. Also, if there are any cool research opportunities that your professors are offering, go for it. Take advantage of them.
Right.
Could be really, really good, really, really interesting, and really, really fun for you.
Right.
Last tip on college. And this is something that I think I've actually been told. I've given this advice to some people before, and I've been told that this is something that almost nobody thinks about. When you are choosing your university or college, think about where you want to end up in terms of where you would like to live after you're done with college or university, because almost all of the people that you meet when you are at your school, unless it's a very, very special, prestigious, place that doesn't have to have any sort of state state admissions requirements, almost all those people are going to be from the area that school is in. So for me, I went to Villanova University. 70% of the people who went to that school are from New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And the high likelihood is that a lot of those people are going to stay in the New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey area when they graduate. So all of the connections that I make, all of the people that I meet, all of the opportunities that I have will likely happen in that area after I graduate school.
But that doesn't mean that you can't travel back there occasionally.
True.
For, I don't know if you'd go back for football, but maybe for basketball.
Maybe for something, If it is a football school,
right.
You might go back for football.
If it doesn't mean that there aren't local chapters of
That's
Villanovans in this area where you live.
That is true.
And it would also I think the beauty of that in some respects, and I hear what you're saying, but I also think that the beauty of going someplace where you're a different entity, you're from someplace else, allows you to experience people who are different from everybody else. Like if you go on to the University of Illinois, everybody puts like where they're from on their doors.
Yeah.
One guy's from Glenview. One guy's from, Aurora. I mean, everybody's
One guy's from Decatur.
Yeah, everybody's from Illinois, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And so at least to go to a place that is further outside of your own bubble, you get to meet a different people.
I don't think I'm not saying that you should, like, if I'm from Illinois, I should go to an Illinois school. It's fine to go to like a school in Florida or California or New York, but consider that you might want to stay there after you graduate in California or Florida or New York, because all the people who graduate with you and all the job opportunities and all the friendships that you might have cultivated are probably going to remain in that area.
Oh, okay.
Right? Okay. So it's not about where you're from, it's about where you're going to end up.
Okay.
That's what I think, at least.
It's not where you start, it's where you finish.
Right.
Okay.
Some further life advice for post-graduation. Don't worry so much about bad things that happen in your life. I have started to take this philosophy of everything is perfect. And that isn't to say that everything that happens to you is good, but it is to say that...
I was just going to say, are you crazy?
Yeah, if you get like if I go take my dogs for a walk and some, gangbanger drives by and does a, drive-by and I got shot in the abdomen, maybe that's not the greatest thing, but...
Maybe he had a bad appendix and they get to take it out.
Yeah, maybe they get to take it out, right? Yeah, maybe. But I'll put it like this. You had a friend who, his wife, I think, passed away. Not super recently, but maybe like within the last 5 or 10 years.
Okay.
And we went to my sister's wedding, a couple of years ago, and he was there at this wedding,
right?
And he had brought a date,
right?
And I think that, maybe you pulled me aside, or maybe one of your other friends pulled me aside who was there, and they said to me, this is the first time we've seen Jeff out with a date since his wife passed. This is like a really big moment,
right?
And I think she passed away from like cancer or something like that. So obviously, Jeff's wife getting cancer is not good.
Right.
And her dying is not
good.
That's something that is very sad. And, I'm sure he was really sad when it was all going down and when it happened. But that has allowed him to then find other people in his life he can have similar memories and similar moments that he might have had with his wife.
He's getting
a second chance at creating a relationship with somebody like he had with his wife. So in that way, yeah, maybe his wife getting cancer ultimately is like a net negative, or for him, or he might feel that way. But it's perfect because it allows him later in his life to have these other relationships that he would not have had if that didn't happen. That's kind of the idea of it. So things happen in your life to set up other things that happen in your life. And if you as a person are always thinking, oh man, that's so bad, or oh, that's so negative, you might miss the potential opportunity for something good later on in your life because the bad thing happened first.
I hear your example. I'm not wild
totally
about. I'm not wild about that example.
Disagree with me. Go, Mom. What do you think?
Because I think that it's a horribly sad thing to lose the person that you still have adult children with and grandchildren, and that person's never going to participate. But it is great that there's a second chance.
Yeah.
I would almost say that my own situation was, getting divorced from your dad broke up our family, and that was very hard for me to take.
Right.
Very hard for me to take. And I didn't think I'd ever recover from that. And I can't even believe, whatever it is, 7 or 8 years later, that I'm in the position that I'm in, which is what I consider to be strong relationships with my children. I have a solid, decent man in my life. I'm happy. And I was happy before this man came into my life.
Yeah.
It's just so fun to share experiences with somebody. Yeah. And somebody that appreciates me for just who I am.
Yeah.
Even when I'm a goof.
Hey, one thing about this man in your life, don't tease him so much. One of the things in this book said you shouldn't tease your partner that much. And you are a big teaser, Mom. So maybe cut him some slack every now and again.
Okay, getting advice for the old ladies now.
You're welcome,
advice.
Tom. You're welcome. So
okay, what else you got, Eric?
All right. These are going to be pretty quick. Don't indulge too much in drinking, drugs, smoking, etc.
Can I say this? I asked your brother his advice to his 18-year-old self, and he said that exact thing.
Yeah. You will regret it. You will find that the time that you spent doing those things was time you could have either spent doing better things, or you lose time because of the after effects of what you're doing, or you lose opportunities because you're doing something that you think precludes you from doing another thing. Right? Like maybe you're a cigarette smoker and you're like, well, I can't go be athletic because I smoke cigarettes. Right? Next, try not to be too naive. You know, if you grew up a little sheltered, maybe try to get some more life experience, do things that push you outside of your comfort zone, put yourself into situations that you would be uncomfortable with. If you were a suburban kid, maybe go to the big city and see what people living in the city's like. You know, if you were a city person, maybe go out to the farms, see what people in the farms do, right? Give yourself more life experience. Although I think people growing up in the city are going to be decidedly less naive than people growing up in the suburbs.
Well, and I think that's where our experiences as humans, you and I, are very different because I did grow up in the city.
You were a city gal. Yeah.
So because I'm a city person, I just valued the green space so much out in the suburban area. But I also was never naive about things because I did grow up in the city, and there is a certain savviness that you have to operate and move through a city in an effective manner. So it's not, it would never have been, it's not intimidating to me to go to any city for the most part.
Just do be aware that like you say, you have to have a certain kind of moxie to move around in the city. And that's because that there are people out there that would take advantage of you if you don't know what you're doing, right?
For sure.
So just, make sure that you understand that. Learn how to stand up for yourself. Learn how to make sure that you can move, like you say, through your environment as you need to. Be competitive, but not overly competitive.
Oh.
Right? Like you be competitive in a competitive environment. Be as competitive as you possibly can be. Like if you're doing if you're a college athlete and you're trying to make it to, whatever your major league sport is, do everything you can in your ability in those games, in your athletic competitions.
And your training and all that
and
business,
your training to make it there. If you're having a kickball match, you're playing keg ball where you got the big beer keg and you're trying to get really drunk and also play kickball.
Don't be a stupid head.
Don't kick the ball so hard you hit some poor girl in the face and you got to get an ambulance.
I've heard this complaint in pickleball. Pickleballers, don't be trying to take out your neighbors.
Yeah, pickleballers.
Dial it back.
Easy out there. Easy out there, right? Don't always be motivated solely by the end goal. A lot of the times when we're working towards something or when we want something, maybe it's a material possession, we look at that thing and either the idea of having that thing or the steps that we're taking along the way to achieve that goal or make that journey, that is where the value lies in. And a lot of the time when you finally
when did you get so smart?
I read a book. I read some books.
Okay, read a book, yeah.
I'm pretty smart by nature, Mom. Thank you very much. Jeez, kind of rude. Again, Mom, please. What the heck? So, if you get that thing or you make it to the end of your journey, a lot of the times it's like, okay, what next? What do I do now?
That's the problem.
So that time that you spent working towards it is really where there's value.
That's what you enjoy.
That's why
golf is good for me because I'll never master it.
There's never an end goal to golf.
It.
We're never as good at golf as we'd like to be. That's what makes it such a compelling game. Another thing that I think is really good, get a bicycle, learn how to ride it, learn how to navigate your environment with that bicycle. Don't be over-reliant on other modes of transportation. Try to be self-propelling.
No mopeds for me.
Right. Don't spend too much time online. I think social media is one of the most destructive and dangerous inventions of our time. And understand that most of the stuff that you see online is either extremely, extremely unrealistically positive or extremely, extremely unrealistically negative, solely to drive engagement and clicks, because that's what the advertisers want. And that's what it's all about nowadays. So just don't get caught up in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok.
Unless, of course, you're looking to see Mom, please.
Yeah, unless you want to see more Mom, please. Then do whatever.
Then we want you to engage.
Yeah. Also, don't put too much time into like online video games, internet games, video games in general. You can play them still, but just don't go overboard with them. I personally have had issues with
I do
that.
Wordle.
Yeah, that's okay. You can words
I
with
do
friends
connections,
or whatever. Yeah,
and I do the mini puzzle, and that's
all right.
I had to stop doing words with friends because it was
Did you?
starting to interfere with my life.
Well, that's good.
Because I did it first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Last thing before I went to bed, and then if somebody contacted me midday, and I was losing time in my life.
So see, even if you're my mom, you can play too many video games.
Right,
it's possible.
Right, you're right. It was. I had to sign
That's
off and
funny.
say to my friends,
I'm done.
apologize, but I need to be done.
Yeah.
With words with friends.
Well, that's funny. The next thing, don't be beholden to your first job out of school. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, try to set something else up. Look for a new job.
Yeah.
Maybe don't quit your job before you have that next job set up, or at least a couple interviews lined up. But you can even go to your manager and tell him, look, man, I'm not really super happy about what's going on here. I think I might want to find a different thing going on. And my manager at AT&T was actually a great guy. He was always in my corner trying to help me towards what I wanted to do. And it kind of didn't end up working out at the end of the day. But I remember having conversations with him where he's like, Eric, I knew this kid when I was growing up. Instead of going to college, he went out to the Middle East or Northern Africa or something and worked with the oil industry out there, would make $400,000 in a year, spend a year off, go do it, and he would go a year on, a year off, a year on, a year off.
Right.
And that's what he did. And it's definitely very different than what a lot of people would do, but if he basically is painting the picture. If you want to do something dramatically different than what you're already doing, go for it. Do it.
Right.
Take time for yourself. This, I think, is important. Learn to be okay with being alone, but don't strive to be alone. You need human contact and human interaction.
You don't want to be like Jack Nicholson in The Shining.
Yeah, right.
It's showtime.
Right? Yeah, so make sure that you're fine being alone, though. You can curl up with a book, or you can, watch a show, or you can just, hang out by yourself with your thoughts, or whatever you want to do. But social interaction is also very, very important. So don't find yourself alone. Right? Make a few really, really close friends. You don't need hundreds of friends. You see those people on Facebook and they have thousands of friends.
Well, that's one of my pieces of advice as a 60-plus-year-old to a 35-year-old.
Yeah.
You don't need a cadre of friends. You need a couple.
3 or 4.
You need 3 or 4. And
really
sometimes a friend is not just sometimes a friend is your confidant.
Yep.
Sometimes a friend is, we go do this together.
Yeah.
There's different situations that you have different friends in, but you don't need to have, a bevy of friends.
Right.
Because you cannot possibly form an intimate relationship with all of those people that you'll find meaningful.
Yeah. You just can't spend enough time. There's not enough
time
hours in the day
No.
to make sure that everybody gets, an equal slice of you, right? But yeah, I think having a couple of really, really good friends just makes life a lot more fun and interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Understand, and this is, you will be able to speak more about this, less so than, more so than I can at least, but understand that you are and will get older. You are getting older, you will get older.
Wait, is that happening to me?
Right now? Yeah, I think. Mom, I
get crow's feet during this conversation?
Listen, the aging is coming from inside the house.
Oh, geez.
Oh no. No, but this was something that was also echoed in the book, is that a lot of people don't come to terms with their, I think a lot of people think about their mortality from a very young age. The author of this book said that he became aware of his mortality at age 5, which kind of shocks me.
That's creepy.
I think that's a little creepy.
Yeah.
I think maybe I became aware of it. When did Grandma pass away? When did your mom pass away?
Oh, you were probably...
It's 8 or 9 years,
No,
10?
you were older. You were maybe 13.
Okay, so when I was 12, 13 years old, I think this is really when I got my first taste of what that kind of was and what that kind of meant, because I didn't really have the greatest relationship with my grandfather, your father, so his passing didn't affect me that much, but your mother's did. Yeah. And, I think what we don't necessarily think about, we kind of think sometimes we get that like existential dread of like, oh my God, I'm someday not going to exist or whatever. But I think what we don't kind of think about is, how do I make every day right now as fulfilling as I possibly can, and not think too much about that existential dread.
And that's a critical piece of being comfortable with the aging process.
Yeah, I think so.
Is to recognize that, nobody gets to cheat death.
Right. We all only get so much time.
And to understand that every day has to be treated not like your last day. No. But with gratitude and recognizing the things that are really good, and not dwelling on the things that aren't so good. Right.
Yeah. So I think, realizing that as you get older, you're not going to be, at some point, you're going to peak in various different things, right? And you're not going to be getting any better at those things. And the decline eventually starts to happen. And even
so I'm going to be like a piece of overripe fruit.
Well, maybe you'll be like a slice of cold pizza that was left in the fridge for a day or two. It's still good in the morning, though.
Okay.
But yeah, like even now, like if I have a couple of alcoholic beverages, the next day I might get a really, really intense hangover off of just like having 4 drinks. And I might drink water in between, and I might, do everything that you're supposed to do to avoid a hangover, but it will still happen. And I'm thinking like, man, in college, I would slam like 12 beers in a night and be totally fine the next day. What the heck happened?
Oh my goodness.
That was a light night, Mom. That was a chill night. So you have to remember that we all do have a limited amount of time on this earth. And I think that for me, I've thought from a not very early age, but I've thought ever since like, my mid-20s that time is what I care about the most. It's not, I don't care that much about money. Money will come. I'll make money. But what I don't have a lot of, or at least I guess I have a limited amount of time, is time. So I've got to make sure that I prioritize that correctly.
Sure. Makes sense.
Yep. So that's kind of the stuff that I would generally tell myself in these different kind of stages of having been, 18 years old to, I guess, 36 years old. And generally, I have some just advice for myself, like speaking directly to me, like not just like platitudes, but speaking directly to me. If I was to say something directly
do you want to hold those before I get to my stuff? Or you want to go?
I think it fits in right now. It's good for right
ahead.
now.
Go for it.
Be somebody that you want to spend time with. Like if you could ask yourself, would I go get a beer with myself? Say yes, hopefully. And if you're saying no, then find out why you say
I'm super fun.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Right. I'm very fun. I'm interesting. I'm funny. I'm smart. I would have a beer with myself. Right.
I'm a good dancer.
So, be comfortable with self-criticism and introspection because you're probably going to have to do a lot of it to get to that point where you're going to become comfortable with yourself.
Right.
And don't wait for somebody else to tell you that what you're doing is not acceptable. Understand that there are some things that you can do that are like good, and that there are some things that you can do that are bad. And an example of something like that I can kind of point to, and I think my generation is very, very bad at examining themselves and deciding whether or not something that they are doing is actually good or bad. I was watching this other podcast called the Whatever Podcast, and it's a male host with a bunch of like young women on the panel, and generally it's like a dating podcast. They talk about things like relationships and dating advice, mostly from the perspective of the young women explaining how it is for them in the dating process. And then the male host is kind of like pushing back on that with, here's what it's like from our perspective, the guy's perspective, right? Now, there was a girl on this podcast recently who enthusiastically exclaimed that she had a live-in boyfriend who she treated like a dog, and he would wear a leash and a collar and sleep on the floor in a dog bed. And one of the male host is like, do you not think that what you're doing is a little bit weird and kind of like morally like
demeaning,
like off, like reprehensible almost, like you're kind of monstrous treating this guy like a dog? And she was like, well, no, he wants to do it. He never told me that he didn't want to do it. He's kind of doing it of his own accord. And then she mentions that she's got like a daughter, and the daughter's in the home with her. And I'm like thinking like, okay. So you're treating like a guy, like a dog in your home with your daughter present, and she is going to grow up thinking that this is how you treat men, right? That's messed up. You can't do that. And especially thinking if you flip the genders there, and it's like a guy who has a girl in his house who's wearing a collar and sleeping like a dog, that's monstrous behavior. And this girl, she acted as though she never even considered that the idea that what she was doing was bad. Like enabling somebody's, what seems to be poor mental health is kind of, she didn't think that was a bad thing. So, I think you have to be able to look inside yourself and be like, is this thing that I am engaging with like good? Like if you smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, maybe that's not good. Maybe that's objectively kind of bad for you. And you should be able to tell yourself without anybody else telling you that that's bad and you should stop. Right. So that's something that I think that definitely my generation has kind of got its wires crossed a little bit, because there's all this stuff going on online that you see that you really get a screwed up view of what is normal and acceptable in modern society.
I'm wondering if this has anything to do, and this is just off the top of my head, with the fact that your generation may have been brought up to think that everybody was special and a snowflake.
It could have been.
And that everybody
got
up.
You guys screwed us up.
Right.
No.
And then everybody got a participation trophy.
Yeah.
That
maybe.
And I'm not a big fan of that, nor do I think we carried on in our household that way.
We didn't really do stuff like that in our house. I don't
you
recall.
were expected to. If you had the goods, you were expected to.
You were expected to perform.
Right.
But
so that's interesting that people are free falling.
Yeah, people kind of are doing weird stuff, and I think that they should take a look at themselves. But at the end of the day, you do have to think about things that you want in your life, things that you care about, and you do have to kind of go and try to pursue those things. And this is getting away from if that thing is putting somebody on a leash and treating them like a dog, maybe don't do that. But I think most people aren't doing stuff like that. I think most people just want to have a pretty nice life, have a pretty decent job, have a nice relationship with somebody that they're attracted to, and just try to go after those things,
right?
Earnestly and honestly.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the advice I'd give to myself.
Okay. So I asked a group of friends their thoughts about what advice they would give their 35-year-old selves.
Okay.
And now I do have to provide a caveat to this, though, because this is a homogeneous group of people that I asked. So I would say a lot of the life experiences were relatively similar. And I'll give you a concrete example of this, where I won't capture everybody in the world because of the sample size. When I was on a trustee of a seminary, my fellow trustees and I took a trip, and in the context of that trip, we were asked to respond to the question, "What is the thing in the world that most troubles you, that you're most worried about?" And one guy sitting to my left was a very, very successful financial advisor.
Okay.
And his response was, "I'm concerned that my kids will not be as successful as I have been," which is true.
They probably won't.
The next generation probably won't be as successful as the boomers. And that seemed plausible. And the guy to my right was a very renowned black attorney who had worked in Washington, D.C. I believe he worked with the Clintons during their administration.
Yeah.
Very successful. And he said that's what you worry about. I worry about then on my drive home that I might get stopped by the Chicago police.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting some context
Perspective.
and perspective on this, that not all of these things will ring true with everybody because everybody comes from a different perspective.
Right.
But for the people that I spoke to, a lot of people talked about really wanting to not take things so seriously.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That they wanted to laugh more, they wanted to breathe deeply. And my friend Hope said, don't major on the minors.
Oh, I like that.
That kind of
That's
sounds
nice,
like
yeah.
some of
that's
this is
a
going to
nice-
sound like Hallmark cards. I apologize.
Yeah, some of it's
for
going to
that.
sound cliche,
Okay.
but you know.
A lot of people said stay in the moment.
Yeah.
And don't wish the time away that you're in. Like a lot of people are waiting for, well, this is what's going on in my life now, and I don't care about that because I'm waiting for this next plateau, or I'm waiting for my kid to reach a certain age. Enjoy every moment that you're in. Find the joy in where you're at.
Yeah.
Because your whole life is going to be a journey. You're going to be moving all the time.
Right.
My friend Kelly said, don't worry what others think of you.
Okay.
And I think that's super hard.
I think that's so
I
hard.
think when you're 35, you might be trying to impress bosses. You might be trying to, be moving into a new community, trying to be meeting people and whatnot. And it's just really hard to divorce yourself from the social protocols and the social norms that exist and just be completely your plain old self, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And so I think that that's a little harder to do. And I feel like in my 60s now, I can easily do this.
Yeah, I feel like as you get older, it's easier to do.
But, it takes some doing.
Yeah.
It takes some doing.
Yeah.
I have a friend, Bernadette, who spent her career as a financial advisor, and she said, live below your means and you'll
Okay.
always be rich.
Hey, I like that.
Okay.
I like that.
And Warren Buffett talks about this, managing your debt. Don't be driving up all those credit cards and
Right.
whatnot. Really try to live within your means. And this is a real far cry from where my parents were at, where, in our household growing up, they had layaway. I don't even know if you know what that is.
No, I know what layaway is.
You
Yeah.
buy something, you can't afford it, so you go pay, $10 every week until you pay it off, and then you can bring it home.
Yeah. It's kind of like credit, but you don't actually get the item yet.
Yeah, you
right?
don't get the item.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that, they always bought everything with cash. I mean, if we needed a new refrigerator, they went to the store with cash in their hand.
Jeez.
So,
Wow.
that's a far
Different generation.
Yeah, that's a far cry from
Yeah.
the amount of credit that is available to young people nowadays.
Yes. Yes.
Several people, Lisa and Pat, said take risks and keep trying and don't be afraid of failure
Okay.
because things will work out,
Yep.
right? And
All right.
that's true. Failure is
It's like a stepping stone.
failure is
to
like
success.
a stepping stone, and
Yeah.
or it's a refocusing of your lens. If you did this and that didn't work out, then maybe if you
Change it a
change the
little
lens
bit.
a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe then something else better will occur. So
Okay.
I think you have to consider that.
Yeah.
Pat G said, keep negative people out of your life. This is great advice. However, hard to do. What if the negative people are your family, your coworkers, your boss,
Yeah.
people around you all the time? Although I do have a good friend, my friend Oli from college, who pretty much said, cut yourself away from the toxic people. Don't be prone to second, third, fourth chances. Work hard to remove yourself from that situation, because in the long run, it's better, it's healthier for you. And maybe if you're a parent, it's healthier for your kids. It's
Right.
just healthier.
Yeah.
I like this. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like not everybody follows that.
Not everybody
advice.
follows it.
Yeah.
My good friend Kathy Aducey, you know Kathy.
Oh, yeah.
She says, be curious. Like every situation you get into, be curious about it. If you don't know how something runs, learn how it runs. If you're new to something, try new things.
Yeah.
And so forth. So always be a lifelong learner, I guess is the way I'd say that. My own other half, Tom, said that he was given advice when he was in his early 30s to be a joiner.
Okay. Yeah. Join things.
And he did not take that advice.
No, he didn't. Okay.
And he says you should get involved. And now I have the opposite issue. I am a
You're
joiner.
overly
I'm
involved.
like, okay, don't join. Don't join. You know?
Yeah.
And then, my good friend Karen Kane, you and I have talked about this, that there's 3 times in your life. There's the go-go years,
Yes,
when you can do everything, you're physically capable, you're mentally with it. Then there's the slow-go years where you slow down, where maybe you're not as physically active and you're not as sharp as you were. And then there's the no-go years where you're still around, but you really, you're homebound or whatever.
Right.
And the idea behind that is during the period of time that you can still do things like I am now, do them.
Go do them.
Go do them.
Yeah.
Don't wait. I love that piece of advice. Be childlike, not
Okay.
childish.
Not childish,
Not
childlike.
So be innocent, be trustful, be curious. One person said to me, this is an older friend of mine, Danny. She said, live by the golden rule. And I said to her, I don't think a lot of younger people know what the golden rule is.
Yeah. Yeah. I do.
And?
I believe it's do unto others as you would
Right.
like done unto you.
Right.
Or the negative version of that, which was presented in this book a couple of times, don't do unto others what you would not want
Right.
to
So
have
treat
done to
others
you.
as you want to be treated,
Right.
essentially.
Exactly.
Now, and I was thinking of my own life, like my own stuff, like you did. And I had some, I don't know if they're pearls, but, they're things.
Yeah, lay them on me, because this would be you like sharing them to your
Right.
35-year-old self, right? So I should be listening here.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would say don't settle. You're worthy and you're worthwhile, and find your right place in the world.
Okay.
So whether it's your career or your relationship, find the right place that you really belong. Don't fret over the silly things that people fret over, like women, I got to get married by a certain time, or I got to make, X amount of money by X time, or whatever. Don't fret over that stuff.
We got a friend right now who could really use that advice. Don't worry if you're not married by a certain time, because she is freaking out about turning 30 and not having a boyfriend
Oh
yet.
my goodness. Don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
I myself, had this really interest in doing consulting work in my line of work. So I went into benefits consulting with a rather large firm. And what I found when I went there was it was the same project with different companies over and over and over and over again. And I hated it.
Yeah.
I came from a job where I had a lot of latitude and I did a lot of different various things, and I got projects, put on me and whatnot. That was so much more interesting than doing this one project over and over again.
Yeah.
So,
that sounds like what my AT&T life was like.
But what I'm saying is I got to redefine what I was really looking for at that point.
Okay.
Look for people who bring joy to your life. If you have somebody or someone that doesn't lift you up, don't have them around. Don't have them around.
All right.
Meet people where they are.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, if you and another person, not everybody can be the same as you, either intellectually or physically or financially or whatever.
Right.
So meet a person where they're at.
Okay. Yeah.
So, you can have a constructive dialogue, or you can work with them or whatever.
Sure.
I've seen too many people where I feel they dismiss other people because they're not
meeting at the same place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't really like that all that much.
Okay.
Laugh at yourself.
Like all the time? Like,
ha 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 ha. No.
I got to take myself seriously sometimes.
I know, but if you don't have the ability to laugh at yourself, you're
not going to go far.
You have to find the silliness. We're all going to do silly things. I
Right.
mean, remember I drove that car through concrete.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And you have to laugh at the stupid things you do, because
you do.
you will do stupid things.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will.
and
no matter how smart you are,
Right.
how smart you think you
Right.
are.
And so you just have to be able to say, what a knucklehead. You just have to be able to do that.
True.
Make friends, not enemies.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and you said this already, have a best friend or have a few small
Have a few
circle
very
friends.
good friends. Yeah.
Have a favorite thing. Like I
Yeah.
love music.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right.
Have a favorite movie, a favorite book, a favorite play. Frequent the arts. Enjoy them. I mean, I think about how complex it is to put on a Broadway musical.
You know, we just went and saw Clue, the musical, or I guess it was a play. We saw Clue, the play, at one of the Chicago theaters at the Civic Theater here.
Yeah, and I mean,
it was good. It was fun,
and it's just it's just so amazing.
Yeah.
To watch these things, or a really well crafted movie or well crafted book, or for me, I mean, I love music so much. I just can. It gives me like. When I'm sad, I know what songs I want to listen to.
Yeah.
When I'm super happy, I know what songs I want to listen to.
Tunes,
I mean, it just gives me such joy, Consider another person's circumstances before you react to them. In the last several years, my local Walgreens has hired some folks that are a little challenged.
Okay.
And I see people in line getting very frustrated with them.
Sure.
And I think we just have to step that back a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also think that if someone's, a waitress or a waiter is smart with me or not in a good mood, that maybe something happened to them that day.
Yeah, maybe that they didn't have such a great day.
Right.
So
just, give people a little bit of rope.
Give them some grace.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. Grace is a good way to say it. Most importantly, hug those who you love often.
That's nice.
And tell them how you feel about them.
I try to do that.
Okay.
I try to do that.
So I think the bottom line in your life is be thoughtful. Have goals, but don't be so married to them that you can't pivot or change.
Okay.
And this sounds really corny because
very Hallmark.
You know what this is. No, this is not Hallmarky.
Oh.
Be willing to accept the things you cannot change. Okay, now we're doing the 12-step program.
Yeah.
But learn from those things.
Yeah.
And understand the things that you can have an impact on and the things that you can't. And certainly, if you think about it, the people that you love and that are surrounded, you can have a big impact on them. And remember how important that is. Always. Always. That's it.
Well, I like that. Well, hey, everybody. I think that just about does it for us for this month. We will be back next month with another episode of Mom Please, our 12th episode. Very cool.
Right.
We're getting up there, guys.
Right.
We're getting more and more of these out there.
And remember to follow us on all our platforms.
Yep. Hit us up on our Instagram and our Twitter. We are now on X. Well, I guess, X, right?
X.
As at Mom Please Pod. So check us out there. And we are on Instagram at Mom Please Podcast. So you can find us there. You can also find us on Facebook.
And YouTube. You can, give us comments in the comment line. If you have some piece of advice that you're willing to share, maybe we'll do a mom brief on it to further this conversation and this dialogue.
And please do make sure to like and subscribe. We'll catch you next time, everybody. And remember, mind the generation gap and keep it civil.
See you soon.